Yo, what's up, Cedarcrest? It's me, Justin.
I'm Logan.
I'm Erica.
And this is our YouTube channel. Enjoy. What's up? Hey, it's me, Justin.
I'm Erica.
So we decided that we're gonna have a contest. We're gonna see who can eat a slice of pizza the fastest. I don't really know why we're doing this, but I think it's gonna be great. Erica has chosen to go with the sausage, and I'm going with the pepperoni, primarily because, well, she took the last sausage, but there was still a lot of pepperoni left over. So, what you do?
You're welcome.
Comment below who you think is going to finish this first. We know it's gonna be one of us.
Wow.
So anyway, ready?
Oh.
Here we go. No, start down. Here we go, come on, ready, here we go. 3, 2, 1, now hold on. Is it 3, 2, 1, go? Or is this 3, 2, 1?
Ooh, 3, 2, 1, just get into it.
Okay, ready, here we go. 3, is it finished mouth, or is it just get it in your mouth? Like swallowed in your gut, or is it like just in your mouth, you're golden?
I'm gonna say in your mouth because I think if I try and eat it that fast, I'm gonna throw up. And
Okay, cool. All right, no one wants that. On your mark.
I don't want that.
Get set. 3, 2, 1, go.
You say go.
So good. But does sponsor me.
You're nodding your head as if it helps you chew faster.
It does.
No, it doesn't. Oh, maybe it does.
Pepperoni down.
This is so gross.
I've never eaten pizza again.
Ew. What?
Oh man.
What are you doing?
I don't know. It's called winning.
Easter, a time for fake grass, plastic eggs, these things, chocolate bunnies, and people dressed as bunnies. And then there are the weird parts of Easter, like fake grass, plastic eggs, these things, chocolate bunnies, and people dressed as bunnies, which is interesting. But what does all this stuff have to do with Easter? And if this holiday is about more than candy and wearing uncomfortable clothes to church and lunch with your relatives, what makes Easter happy?
Me, Justin, I got a question for you. What is your happiest moment about Easter growing up? When I was a kid, we would wake up Easter morning and my mom would put our Easter basket right by our door. It was empty. So my sister and I and my brother, we would grab our baskets, top of the stairs, and we would wait until my mom said that one magical word, go. We'd bolt down the stairs, hang a hard left into the family room, and there we would end up picking up as much candy as we could, and there'd be candy lining up on the window ledges and under the seats, on the tables, hiding behind pictures. It was everywhere. And once we had cleaned out that room, we'd go to the foyer where we would go ahead and we would get all the candy up by the front door. And then from there, we'd hang a right into the living room, which, have you ever stopped in with the living room? I mean, it's the space you're supposed to live in, but no one actually goes in it. It's like the most perfect looking room. Well, we would destroy that thing. I mean, it was just tore up from the floor up, if you know what I mean. Like, there was candy hiding places, and we would just terrorize that space, rip it to shreds, and then we'd continue on in the family room where we would go and find even more candy, filling our baskets as much as we could. We missed a little bit in the family room oftentimes, and 6 months later we'd find it and convince ourselves it was still edible. Don't judge me, it was tasty. Eventually we'd find ourselves sitting at the kitchen table with our candy baskets, and mom was giving us breakfast, and it was good. But I remember the times where I was happier was when I had more candy than my brother and my sister. I could look at my loot and be like, I got more than you. See, whether you grew up just following the tradition of Easter, or if you actually would go to church and you would celebrate Easter for what the Bible says is true, my guess is Easter was a bit of a happy time for you. My guess is you look back and you have fond memories over what that was like. And over the next couple of weeks, what we want to do is we want to talk about not just what Easter is about, but why we celebrate it. But before we go any further, I do want to address the rabbit in the room. Easter Bunny, what is up with that? I mean, like, who wants to dress up in a furry costume, put on a vest and a bow tie, and then invite kids to sit on his lap? I mean, that's just creepy. Like, at least with Santa, you can sit on his lap and say, hey, I want this and this for Christmas. Like, what do you say to the Easter Bunny? Yo, nice ears? Like what is up with that? In fact, I would say the Easter Bunny is kind of scary. In fact, I would say he's really scary. And my guess is your mom and dad aren't going to have you dress up for Easter, put on your Sunday best, hop in the car, go to the mall, and then sit on some weird dude's lap who's got an Easter Bunny costume on. Side note, if you're an Easter Bunny for a side hustle, like, I'm not judging you. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think you're going to find me hanging out with you. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Easter Bunny and kind of scary stuff. He's creepy and scary and all that. But my guess is you and I, we know that feeling of scary. And my guess is it's because we know that's like the fear things. When you're little, maybe you're afraid of the dark, or maybe you're afraid of forgetting your favorite toy somewhere, or it breaking and you can no longer replace it, or maybe you're afraid of monsters. My 2-year-old, he's afraid of monsters. The other day, I was carrying him to his room for bed, and I'm holding him like this, and he's like a monkey on me, and all of a sudden he goes, Daddy, monsters. I was like, dude, who told you about monsters? And then I realized we had watched Monsters, Inc. that day. We had watched Monsters University the day before that. And every time he has a really big booger, I call it a monster booger. I think his fear of monsters is probably my fault. I really hope he doesn't think monsters live on his nose. Pray for me. But then we get older. And our fears change. We're no longer afraid of monsters in the dark, hopefully. But then we get afraid of, like, did I pass the test? Did I get an A on my report card? Did I get rejected by a certain person? I can't sit with them at lunch. Like, did I do something embarrassing and it gets caught on social media? I had a friend a couple of years back, and what he would do is he would walk around with a tennis ball. He'd bounce it. Well, one day he was leaving work, and he had his coffee cup in one hand and his tennis ball, and he's bouncing it. And I don't know how it happened, but he bounced the ball as he stepped, putting his foot on top of the ball, and he just slipped, like you see in a cartoon, and he just was flat on his back. The impressive thing, though, was he didn't spill his coffee. The awesome part for us was we actually got to see it on the security camera. So the next day, all of us were just posting online. Like, did you see David fall? It was dope. But we're afraid, like, what if I get caught doing something that's embarrassing, and now it's out there for the world to see, and heaven forbid that video actually go viral. Like, that would be horrible. Or maybe you're afraid that you're going to not make the team, you're not going to make the play, you're not going to get the lead, you're not going to get the same response from the crush you have. Like, you lay it out on the table. You write a note. Check yes if you like me, check no if you don't. And they say, no, I'm good. Like, that fear is real. But then you go to high school. And in high school, you would think all of those childish fears would go away, and actually they just grow with you. Instead of being afraid of getting an A on the test, you're afraid that your GPA won't be high enough so that you can't get into the school of your choice. The school you've dreamed about, the school that, like, your bedroom is decorated with. Or maybe you all of a sudden now have this fear that maybe you're not going to fit in. that maybe you're not actually going to be accepted for the way that you are. Or maybe you're afraid that, you won't live up to the standards that mom and dad have set for you. Or maybe you're afraid of your health. With the coronavirus flying around, like you just need to Google C and coronavirus pops up. Like the news outlets, everyone's talking about it, and it keeps changing, like hour after hour. We can do this, no, we can't. You don't know what is true and what is fake, and we start wondering, am I gonna be okay? Maybe you're going, you know what, bro, I wash my hands 20 times a day. I am good. But then you think about your 65 plus grandma, and you're like, ooh, she's been quarantined. Or you have that friend, the one that doesn't shower all that often, and you're like, dude, I don't want to be around you because what if you're carrying it and you don't even know it? This fear of health for those that you love, for your friends, the rando that walks by you and rubs up against your arm and just kind of transfers from them to you. What are you going to do? Fear has a tendency to determine our steps. Fear has the ability to direct whether we go right or left, whether we stay or whether we go, what we do, who we avoid, who we encounter, what do we do? I would say that maybe what fear does is it highlights the underlying fear of death. I don't mean to be morbid. I'm not talking about physical death, although I'm sure most of us are afraid of that. But I'm talking more about that figurative death, the death of something we love, because death is simply when something comes to an end. Because you know what? When things end, it means they can't be the same. They're not going to continue on the way that we once were. And maybe you're afraid that if people know who you really are, then it would be the end of those friendships. Or maybe you're afraid of the dream of that college ending, because, then you just aren't going to be in that space. You're going to carry on the legacy. Maybe mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and aunt and uncle and everyone in your family's gone to UGA. For me, I would prefer it to be Notre Dame, but if I'm brutally honest, there's no way I was getting into that school. Everybody knew it. But maybe in your family, everyone has gone to this one school, and you're like, well, I'm afraid that there's going to be a death of this legacy. It's going to end with me, and now people will look at me differently. Or maybe there's a lifestyle that you've been living, choices you've been making, and if you were to get found out, it would be the end of the relationships that you have. Then what? Everything would be different. Well, whether it's a physical death or a figurative death that you are afraid of, it boils down to us losing out on something that we're never going to get back. And so when we think about death in that term, it's easy to see that all of our fears kind of flow back into the fear of something ending, of missing out on what once was and never be able to get it back. It's actually the beauty of Easter. See, Easter is a celebration in the midst of what everyone else thought was death. Now, if you have spent any time looking through your Bible, you might recognize that it's broken into two sections. And the defining in the middle was actually the birth of God's Son, Jesus. See, out of God's great love for you and me, he sent his Son from perfect heaven to come to imperfect earth. And here on this imperfect earth, he lived a perfect life, never once sinned, never once messed up, never once took his eyes off of God. And by the time he was in his early 30s, he was arrested even though he had done nothing wrong. He was beaten even though he didn't fight back. He was nailed to a cross to die like a sinner, like a criminal, but he committed no crime. And it was in that people began to experience the fear of death, to experience life changing as they knew it. But that's not where the story ends. fact, 3 days later, Jesus conquered sin and death forever. He rose from the grave. He walked around. He talked around. He defeated death. And in doing that, lives were changed. In fact, there's a guy who years later actually encountered Jesus. His name was Paul. Paul grew up going to the right schools. He had the right education. He had the right family. He came from the right neighborhood. I mean, he had it going for him. He had the best job. His job was to actually be like a religious leader enforcer. And if you weren't following the religious laws and rules the way that Paul had interpreted, he could use any means to intimidate you to follow his way. And oftentimes he would use the threat or the fear of death. One day Paul was going off to a city to force followers of Jesus to follow his way. And he encountered Jesus. Now, I'm not talking about like Jesus before he was buried. I'm talking about the risen Jesus. The very same Jesus that conquered sin and death. He encountered Paul, and in that moment, Paul was changed. Everything about Paul flipped. He went from being a hunter of followers of Jesus to actually being hunted for his faith in Jesus. Like it is an incredible story. His life was turned upside down, kind of like Will Smith in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but better. If you catch the reference, well, good on you. And if you don't, sorry, your childhood wasn't nearly as cool as mine. But here's the thing. Paul did not live out of this fear of death. In fact, Paul wrote a letter to the church in Corinth. And in this letter, he actually said these words: "Death is swallowed up in victory." Oh, death, where is your victory? Like, he's calling out death. He's putting it on blast. And he says, "Oh, death, where is your sting?" See, Paul understood that Jesus died on the cross and rose from the grave for him, conquering sin and death forever. And that he was the recipient of all the good that came for that. See, no longer do we have to live in fear of death, because Jesus, he didn't just like end it. He destroyed it. Like demolished it. Kind of like when my son and I are playing with Legos, he just comes in and just like knocks them all down. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's gone. It is obliterated once and for all, which means Easter, we get to understand and see that fear isn't final. Now, Jesus defeated death, which means that he can defeat anything that you're afraid of. Coronavirus got nothing on Jesus. In fact, Jesus can defeat anything, but what fear will do is fear will say, pay attention to me. Listen to me. Let me control you. Let me manipulate you. Get you to obey it. See, fear is all about power, right? And the only way for fear to get more power is for you to give it more power, for you to allow it to influence you. But what Jesus did on the cross in defeating sin and death forever, it showed that fear's got nothing on us. Like we don't have to be afraid of fear. Now, does that mean that at the end of this, you're going to walk away and go, "Fear, deuces, you got nothing on me," and never be afraid again? No. Let's be honest. The coronavirus is still happening. People are still out there trying to inflict their opinion. There is still going to be those moments where we're afraid of things, but fear and death, they no longer have that same sting. We don't have to worry about them. See, even if fear doesn't get the final word, it may mean that there are still some things that you and I are afraid of, but when we can understand what Paul was saying, when we can recognize the truth and Jesus on the cross, well, we can see the happy in Easter. Paul wrote another letter to the church in Rome, and there he says this. He said, "The Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you." Like, let's just pause for a minute. The same power that Jesus rose from the dead with, defeating sin and death forever, lives inside of you and me when we decide to follow him. That is crazy. That is encouraging. See, what Paul is saying is that the same power that defeated sin and death 2,000 years ago lives in you, and so we do not have to be afraid anymore. I got to be honest, I need to hear that. I need to be reminded of that. So I want to toss a question your way. Where has fear been holding you back? Is it in relationships? Is it in trying something new? Is it in maybe applying to that college? Is it maybe in just acknowledging that you've got some mental health concerns? Is it even just like exploring what it means to follow Jesus? Where does fear have a grip on you? But let's go one step further. What step should you take to prove that fear doesn't have power over you? Is it maybe forgiving somebody? Maybe letting them off the hook for what they did to you? Is it apologizing to somebody else? Maybe acknowledging what your part in the whole matter was? Is it talking to a school counselor or to a doctor and saying, hey, listen, something's going on and I could really use some help? Is it telling your parents about some choices you've been making? Is it simply picking a new group of friends that are going to have a different type of influence on you? Or maybe it's just asking some really good questions. Maybe you have questions about what the Bible says, and instead of just keeping them locked up inside of you, you're like, I'm going to actually ask these questions. I don't know what your next step is, but I do know this. If someone believes that Jesus is the Son of God, died on a cross for you and for me, defeated sin and death for all of eternity, and has invited him to be the leader of your life, and the very same power that rose Jesus from the dead lives in you, and that means fear ain't got nothing on you. Fear has got no hold. You can handle whatever life tries to throw at you because you are not facing it by yourself. You have God on your side, and that's all you need. See, the world out there is going to tell you that you need to be nervous, that you need to be anxious, that you need to, be afraid of the things coming at you. But when we read God's word and when we celebrate what Easter is, we see that death and fear no longer have a sting, because the victory is in Jesus and not in them. And that means Jesus is more powerful than anything you could face. So, while the rest of the world may be controlled by fear and by stress and anxiety, we don't have to be. We can turn to Jesus, and when we can turn to Jesus, the one who conquered sin and death, it makes Easter a happy time. Peace. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We want to give you a couple of potential next steps. So here's what I want you to do. Pull your phone out, and I want you to do one of the following. If you are a middle school student and you want to stay up to date with what's going on with Cedarcrest students, I want you to text at CS-MS to 81010. If you're a high school student, I want you to text at CS-HS. So that's at CS-HS to 81010. If you have decided that, you know what, I am ready to take my next step, and I've decided to follow Jesus, we want to celebrate with you. So what I want you to do is I want you to text at CS-saved to 81010, because we want to be able to reach out to you and give you some practical next steps as you continue on your journey. If you decide, you know what, my next step is actually to get baptized, what I want you to do is a text at CS-baptism. That's BAPTISM. I can't spell, so I have to check it out. Again, it's at CS-baptism to 81010. And finally, if you're a brand new student and you're like, I don't know what's going on here, what I want you to do is just I want you to text at CS, there's a theme here, at CS-INTERGENERATIONAL I am new to 81010. We can keep you up to date with what's going on, get you plugged into a group, and just say hi. So until next time, peace.